Two completely unrelated movies enter, one may or may not be slightly better according to some weird guy on the internet. Seriously, how is it June already? The year is going by way too fast. The first Inside Out is a great movie. I remember being like 9 watching it in theaters and being one of the first movies to make me unironically emotional. It was a really fresh concept with likable characters, charming energy, and creative visuals, but most of all, it was very grounded in genuine emotion. It's almost like this movie represents everything Pixar stands for, which is telling seemingly simple child-oriented premises with raw emotion and mature execution. Still want justice for Bing Bong though. Like top 10 anime sacrifices, I still think about his valiant sacrifice before I go to bed every night. Funnily enough, I remember this movie coming out around the time when people were starting to become weary about Pixar. They went a whole year without releasing a movie in 2014, their movie in 2013 was received weaker than most. Man, this film is still so underrated. Even in 2015, when one of Pixar's best movies got released, another one of their weaker ones got released too. Don't tell anyone, but I still kinda like this movie too. But anyways, to bring my parallelism together, Inside Out 2 is also coming out at a time where people are starting to lose faith in Pixar. I mean, the company hasn't been that profitable for about 2 years now, and that's coming from putting out flop after flop. I mean, I've enjoyed some of Pixar's more recent films, but I still don't think they hit the same way the older movies did. Man, early 2000s Pixar ate and left no crumbs. To be fair, most studios did at that time. So yes, I was nervous going into this movie. One might even say I was anxious. See what I did there? Especially after some of the trailers that got released for this movie.
15 years old and I don't care what my mama says, I'm gonna have a baby.
I'm happy to report that Inside Out 2 is pretty darn great, especially as a sequel, though it probably won't be that long before we get video essays saying how the first Inside Out was a masterpiece and the sequel is trash. Yeah, every sequel goes through that backlash phase on the internet for some reason. It's like, what? I thought we all liked this movie. Now it's suddenly the worst thing ever? But yes, Inside Out 2 gets what made the first movie work so well and knows how to expand on those aspects perfectly, starting off with the characters, mainly Joy, who in the beginning of the first movie had a very one-track mind. She was so fixated on keeping Riley happy, she was willing to literally push anybody out of the way to accomplish that, even if the other emotions, specifically sadness, didn't feel that great about it. And the movie was able to evolve Joy by having her be pushed outside of her comfort zone. The end result was her learning that all memories and emotions are important and have a place for Riley, even the seemingly negative ones. W message, which is actually further explored in the sequel when new emotions appear right after Riley enters teenagehood. Joy and the other 4 emotions are kicked out by anxiety and forced to find their way back to HQ, encountering lots of really creative locations along the way. A vault where all of Riley's secrets are held, including a handsome DeviantArt-esque video game character, and Pouchy, what a G, little dude came into clutch. Yeah, a lot of this movie's strengths come from how cleverly it's able to visualize so many different processes of the mind. A brainstorm? Like, are you kidding me? That's so creative. I think one of the most realistic things about the movie is how all of these new emotions and feelings develop at literally the worst times. Right when she goes to camp and is trying to make new friends while keeping her old ones and fitting in. For me, it was during middle school, aka some of the worst years of my life. Do not miss it at all. Like, bruh, how did we ever survive these dark times? Thankfully though, the movie handles all of these new subjects with so much finesse and subtlety. Oh, how I've missed you, subtlety. We don't see enough of you in movies these days. I especially like how it handled Anxiety, who was not only very well designed, voiced, and animated, bruh, she's literally just Pepe from the Muppets. Okay, maybe a slightly less romantic version. But her whole evolution as a character is very clever and well executed. I like how she starts off as energetic but well-meaning, helping Riley to think ahead and be rational, but slowly devolves into an erratic little munchkin whose crazy what-ifs end up stressing out Riley more than helping her. Hey, too much of anything is a bad thing, but still a great metaphor for how if left unchecked, anxiety can slowly consume you and stress you out, especially during the teen years. Also, nice to see Sadness and Joy are getting along now, because a lot of best friends are also total opposites. It also shows how everybody actually kept their character development from the first movie. I'm looking at you, Large Brain 2. The sequel introduces the concept of core beliefs and how memories and experiences shape us as a person. I literally love this idea and how it's handled. Joy initially still tries to control the memories and emotions that shape her core beliefs, but ultimately realizes that all memories, negative or positive, are what make Riley Riley. Yeah, you can't just cherry pick everything to fit some unrealistic status quo, because kids, life is messy, the human brain is messy, and most of all, I'm messy. It was also cool to see more of fear, anger, and disgust now have way bigger roles levels and feel way more fleshed out as characters, because they're able to express feelings outside of their usual MO, making characters who are by design one note less one note. I know a lot of people were skeptical about the recasting after Bill and Mindy turned down returning because it wasn't enough money apparently, but everyone ultimately delivered. Tony Hale as Fear took a little getting used to, but he ultimately fit the role well, and Lisa Lapira sounds practically the same as Mindy. Kinda glad to not see her in this movie. She has contributed to one of the biggest animated atrocities of the century. She's in timeout right now. The new emotions are really entertaining too. I liked all of them, even if Envy felt a little bit more positive than I was imagining. I think this envy is just a blanket personification, where it's more of a feeling of jealousy and wanting or even sometimes admiring what other people have, then that making you feel inadequate because of it. But if there was a new emotion that stood out to me, it would be ennui, because I am an extremely nonchalant person and she embodies that personality trait flawlessly. And Frenchly, is that even a word? I can't say I felt as moved to tears watching this movie as I did the first one. As you know, nothing really beats Bing Bong's sacrifice in the memory dump scene, which are both so emotionally potent and raw. But then again, sometimes it's the subtle moments that are just as powerful and dramatic. Watching a character gently and quietly cry is honestly sometimes more gut-wrenching and impactful than watching a character full-on sob and scream. I know it just embodies that feeling of hopelessness so well, like middle school does. This movie's animation, as expected, also looks fantastic. You can see that they've improved a lot since the first movie. It's like watching a kaleidoscope of colors dance around on the screen. Yeah, I'm a big sucker for some good old saturation. If I were to talk about flaws, I really only have two things, and they're not even really bad things at that. One, I wish the movie was a bit longer, which actually is probably more of a compliment. I don't know if it's just me being conditioned to watch longer movies lately, but it felt like they could have taken their time a little bit more with the ending and even added some more narrated bits from Joy. And number two, I miss Michael Giacchino doing the score. They got some new lady who's only ever scored a Carl's Date short film to do it, and granted she does a decent job, but the music just didn't draw me in the same way the first movie did. Also, I'm probably a bit biased because I am a huge bossa nova and jazz lover, and Inside Out 1's soundtrack was filled with it. Still, Inside Out 2 is a great sequel, highly recommend it, go watch it. Just about as good as the first movie, maybe just a little bit below it, but still really great. Now, I was fortunate enough to watch two bangers in one weekend, with Netflix's Ultraman Rising being on my radar for a while now. I've never been a huge Ultraman fan, but I know just enough about him to be dangerous, and from the looks of it, this movie doesn't stay extremely true to his original lore. It's more of a fresh new take on this beloved character, and I gotta say, it was actually pretty awesome. In fact, I think the only people who probably wouldn't like this are the ones who think every reboot has to be exactly the same as the previous iteration, and that is not the point of a new iteration of a franchise. I mean, wouldn't it be boring and repetitive if every iteration of the Turtles was exactly the same? It's cool to explore new worlds and takes on these old characters, especially for a new generation. But alas, nostalgia is one heck of a drug. That's not to say this movie is perfect, but most of what it does extremely well. First off, I gotta talk about the animation. Yes, it does feel blatantly Spider-Verse, closer than any movie that's come before it, crazy enough, but there's a reason studios are imitating this style, and that's because it's awesome. I mean, I personally wouldn't get tired of this style, but I'm sure a lot of people already are. At least most of the new movies imitating this style actually have a reason to imitate it. Ninja Turtles 2D Inspo came from that of a teen scribbly textbook, Puss in Boots a painted storybook, and now Ultraman, which is like a combination between anime and comic book style, and yes, the action lines and flash frames make the kaiju battles so much more dynamic and impactful. Just the sense of scale. Yeah, animation wise, all fire, no notes. The story of course isn't as impressive, but it's still pretty solid. A successful baseball star, Kenji, is handed the job of being Ultraman and protecting the city from destructive kaiju by his father. Yeah, they don't really explain a ton of how he got the powers, but this isn't that type of movie. He rescues a baby kaiju and has to learn how to handle his baseball career whilst raising a giant infant. So it took me a minute to realize, but Ultraman Rising is this year's Seabeast. Both good movies with theater quality animation that got pushed to Netflix, and both start off with strong presence and action but end up settling for, I hate this word, it's so pretentious, pedestrian plot lines. Yeah, I don't care, I still love both of these movies. I just acknowledge if they kept up the intense energy that they had in the beginning of these films, they might have been even better. But I guess we'll never know, huh? The story takes a bit of a left turn into more conventional territory when Ken has to deal with raising the baby kaiju, but the end product is still very funny and sweet, mostly because Emmy steals every scene that she's in. Just look at this thing. It was obviously designed to sell plushies, and dang it, now I want one. I haven't been super crazy about the sudden onslaught of daddy issue movies I've been subjected to lately, but this is probably one of the better ones because it takes its time establishing the pain and resentment Kenji feels towards his father after his mother dies, and this slowly allows the natural events of the movie to draw them closer together. Kenji is your typical arrogant Lightning McQueen-esque hotshot protagonist, but his evolution to not just a good parental figure but also an all-around better person is pretty satisfying to watch, like I was actually rooting for him by the end of the movie. And yeah, that final battle is just chef's kiss. Fantastic. The lighting, the timing, the colors, it actually made me really mad I couldn't watch this movie on the big screen. Now if I'm going to weirdly compare these two movies, Inside Out 2 already has the edge of being a sequel in an already established universe. The script is definitely a bit tighter as is the pacing, and the new characters are appealingly designed and voiced. It just didn't grab me emotionally as much as the first movie. I feel like I'm the outsider on this though, because I hear a lot of people cried while watching this movie. The only part that really got me close to tears was when Ennui said it's wee time and started wing all over the place. Ah, truly art. Ultraman for me, weirdly enough, had a bit of an emotional edge over Inside Out, of course points for the creative visual style, and it's not even a competition when it comes to the action sequences, some of the best I've seen in a while. Inside Out 2 still probably comes out on top for narrative reasons, but I still enjoyed Ultraman very much and I highly recommend it to everybody. Like a mix between Pacific Rim, Big Hero 6, and Spider-Verse, and yes, that is an epic combo. Yeah, I watched Inside Out 2 in the theater like this past weekend as of now, and it was really good. Like everybody clapped at the end, everybody had a good time. It was like a real, like, I guess a return to form for Pixar basically, so I was really happy to see that. The year kinda has been moving by pretty fast, but you know what? We always find some way to keep up with it somehow. But anyways, enjoy the rest of your day everybody.